The blizzard came faster than anyone expected, suffocating the forest, swallowing the roads, and turning the world into a white, frozen nightmare. Most people ran indoors for warmth, but one elderly couple didn't have a home to run to. Their clothes were soaked. Their hands were blue. Their voices trembled. Thomas wrapped his arms around his wife, shielding her fragile body from the storm. "Hold on, Ellie. Please," he whispered, though his own voice shook with fear. Each breath felt heavier, each second colder. Cars passed, headlights flashing briefly over the couple's frozen silhouettes, yet none stopped. A truck roared past, then another, and no one saw them, or worse. No one cared. The world had abandoned them. Just as the cold was seconds away from claiming their lives, a German shepherd suddenly appeared through the storm, ears alert, breath steaming, barking urgently. He circled them, digging frantically through the snow. Seconds later, a man fought his way through the blizzard after him, a Marine veteran, his face blasted by ice. "Shadow, what did you find?" He shouted that he didn't know their names. He didn't know their story. But when his K9 partner sprinted toward the elderly couple, whimpering as if sensing death itself, he understood one terrifying truth. He had only one choice: risk everything, or watch them die. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The blizzard rolled in like a living beast, swallowing the empty highway 1 inch at a time. Snow hammered the pavement, the wind howled through the trees, and temperatures dropped so fast it felt like the air itself was turning to ice. In the middle of that white fury stood an elderly couple, Thomas and Eleanor, huddled together beside a broken-down shopping cart that held everything they owned. Their coats were thin. Their breath came out in painful gasps. Their fingers were turning blue. Cars sped past, tires skidding on the icy road, but no one stopped. Every set of headlights brought a glimmer of hope, until each one disappeared into the storm, leaving Thomas and Eleanor shaking harder than before. Eleanor raised her frail hands toward an approaching truck. "Please help us," she cried, her voice cracking in the wind. The truck slowed for a moment, its brake lights glowing red, then continued on, vanishing into the snow. Thomas leaned heavily on his cane, his legs buckling. "Ellie, we won't make it much longer," he whispered. The storm howled louder, burying their footprints. With each passing second, the cold crept deeper into their bones. And just when they thought the blizzard would claim them, a distant bark echoed through the storm, deep in the woods. A small cabin stood against the raging storm. Inside, Ethan Walker, former Marine, now living alone by choice, tightened the latch on his windows as the wind roared like a freight train. His German shepherd, Shadow, sat beside the door, ears perked, muscles tense. Ethan frowned. "What is it, boy?" "Storm's bad. Nothing's out there." But Shadow didn't move. His eyes locked on the door, tail straight, body rigid. Then, suddenly, he barked, sharp, urgent. Before pawing the wood with rising desperation, Ethan grabbed his coat. Shadow never reacted this way unless something was terribly wrong. The moment Ethan opened the door, Shadow bolted into the blizzard. Snow slammed into Ethan's face, stealing his breath, but he pushed forward, following the dark shape disappearing into the white fog. "Shadow, slow down," he yelled, but the dog kept running, guided by instinct and something deeper, an emergency only he could sense. Minutes stretched into eternity as Ethan trudged through the storm, boots sinking into drifts up to his knees. The wind stung like needles, but Shadow's barking grew louder, pulling Ethan onward. Finally, Shadow came into view, circling two collapsed figures half buried in snow. Ethan's heart lurched. An elderly woman lay unconscious, her lips blue, her hands trembling. A frail man knelt beside her, struggling to keep her upright. Shadow barked again, pressing his nose to the woman's cheek, whining urgently. Ethan dropped to his knees. "My God, you two won't survive another minute out here." The rescue had already begun. Ethan didn't waste a second. He scooped the elderly woman into his arms, shocked by how light she felt, like the storm had already taken half her strength. Her head fell against his shoulder, skin icy to the touch. "Stay with me, ma'am. Please stay with me," he murmured, tightening his grip as the wind roared around them. Shadow nudged the frail old man, pressing his body against him for warmth before guiding him forward with careful steps. Thomas leaned heavily on the dog, breath rattling in shallow bursts. "Ellie, is she alive?" he choked out. "She's breathing," Ethan shouted over the storm. "But we have to move now." The blizzard grew fiercer with every step. Snowdrifts rose like walls, forcing Ethan to wade through waist-deep powder while shielding Eleanor's face from the slicing wind. Branches cracked overhead. One snapped and crashed behind them, sending up a plume of white. Thomas flinched, nearly falling, but Shadow braced beneath his legs, steadying him with quiet determination. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The cabin felt miles away, though it was barely a quarter mile. Ethan's legs burned. His breath came out in sharp clouds. The weight in his arms felt heavier by the second. "Shadow, find the way," Ethan yelled. The dog barked once and forged ahead, disappearing momentarily in the swirling white before reappearing like a guide carved from the storm itself. Ethan tightened his grip on Eleanor and pressed forward. They had no choice if they stopped for even a moment. The blizzard would finish what the world had already started. They had to make it home. Ethan kicked the cabin door open with his shoulder, snow spilling inside as he carried Eleanor across the threshold. Warm air rushed out, fogging his breath. He laid her gently on the couch near the fireplace while Shadow guided Thomas in, nudging him until he reached a chair. Ethan slammed the door shut, locking out the storm's fury. He wrapped Eleanor in blankets, her skin pale and trembling. Thomas reached out with shaking hands, whispering, "Ellie, please wake up." Ethan brought heated towels, pressing them carefully against her frozen fingers. Shadow lay beside her, radiating warmth like a living blanket. Minutes passed before Eleanor's eyelids fluttered. She gasped weakly, drawing her first full breath in hours. Thomas broke into tears. "Thank God. Thank God." Ethan knelt beside them. "How long have you two been out there?" Thomas swallowed hard. Shame filled his voice. "We lost our home last year. Medical bills. Everything gone. We've been living out of that card ever since." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "We didn't want to burden anyone. We kept hoping things would get better." Ethan's jaw clenched. No one deserved to face a storm like this alone. Before he could respond, Shadow suddenly lifted his head. His ears shot forward. A low rumble rolled from his chest. He stood, positioning himself between the couple and the door, tail stiff, eyes locked on something outside. Ethan rose slowly. "What is it, boy?" The wind howled beyond the walls, but Shadow wasn't reacting to the storm that he sensed movement. Something close. Something circling the cabin through the wideout. The danger wasn't over. The Shadow's growl deepened, vibrating through the wooden floorboards. Ethan grabbed his rifle from the wall, just as a sharp thud shook the side of the cabin. Snow drifted from the ceiling. Eleanor flinched. Thomas gripped the chair, fear flooding his face. What was that? Ethan peered through the frosted window, but saw only swirling white. Another thud, louder this time, echoed across the cabin walls. Shadow lunged to the door, barking fiercely, hackles raised. Whatever was out, there wasn't the wind. Ethan's voice dropped to a low command. "Stay back. All of you." He cracked the door open, icy air slashing across his face. A shadowy figure darted between the trees. Then another, shapes moving low and fast. Not human. Wolves, driven from the mountains by the storm, starving, desperate. One lunged from the dark, teeth flashing. Ethan fired a warning shot into the air, the sound exploding through the blizzard. The wolves scattered, except for one circling closer, emboldened. Shadow shot past Ethan, ramming the wolf mid-charge with fearless precision. The animal tumbled into the snow, snarling, then retreated into the fog. Ethan slammed the door shut and braced it with a beam. His breath trembled. "They're hungry," he said. "They'll come back." Shadow stood guard, ready to fight the storm itself if he had to. Inside the cabin, the elderly couple clung to each other, praying the night wouldn't claim them after all. Morning light finally broke through the storm, turning the world outside into a frozen, glittering landscape. The wolves were gone. The danger had passed. Ethan opened the door slowly, checking the tree line, while Shadow stood beside him, alert but calm, his job for the night complete. Inside, Eleanor sipped warm tea, color returning to her cheeks. Thomas sat wrapped in a thick blanket, tears in his eyes as he looked at Ethan. "You? And your dog?" You saved our lives, he whispered. Ethan shook his head. Shadow saved you. I just followed him. Shadow trotted to the couple, resting his head gently on Thomas's knee. The old man smiled for the first time in months. BY afternoon. Emergency services arrived, stunned to learn the couple had survived the storm at all. Arrangements were made. Housing, medical care, a path to safety. As they were escorted out, Eleanor looked back at Ethan. You gave us more than shelter, she said softly. You gave us hope. And for the first time in years, the cabin felt warm again.